perfectly done. Or the reading of James. The way that you read it, was perfectly done. I think I would have, when I think of how that was heard, some of the first times where it was just a group of people listening, not reading it along, I would have elected you to read that. And you did it well done. I was thinking of that. I'll try to do my best with Mark. As we turn to the gospel after the epistle, let us turn to God in prayer. Creator of life, all that is good, all that sustains us, good morning to you. Here we are to gather in your name, united in your word. And so as we do, may we do our best to open wide our hearts to receive what it is you have to say to us today. And that is very individualistic. That speaks to our own individual hearts. So open them deep and wide for your will and your word to be done in them. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. We continue with the journey through Mark. And we are one chapter later, but there's a bit of a chapter gap from where we were last week, so I'm going to catch us up in the beginning part of the sermon. Where we catch Jesus and the disciples now, we kind of catch them right after two events. If you remember what we talked about last week, it was Jesus talking about the way of the cross is to carry your own. And Peter was upset by this. And that's because his paradigm of Jesus, of Christ, was not to suffer and die. And so he didn't know what else to say, so he just said, no, this can't be. His paradigm had to shift. Okay, we're going to do more paradigm shifting here this morning. So as we turn to them, a couple events since then has happened, and here they are once again, Jesus still speaking the same language about what's going to happen to him. So listen now as I turn to verse 30. It is written, they left that place and they passed through Galilee. Jesus did not want anyone to know where they were, because he was teaching his disciples. He said to them, the Son of Man is going to be delivered into the hands of men. They will kill him, and after 3 days he will rise. But they did not understand what he meant, and they were afraid to ask him about it. They came to Capernaum. When he was in the house, he asked them, what were you arguing about on the road? But they kept quiet, because on the way, they argued about who was the greatest. Sitting down, Jesus called the 12 and said, anyone who wants to be the first must be the very last and the servant of all. He took a little child whom he placed among them. Taking the child up in his arms, he said to them, whoever welcomes one of these little children in my name welcomes me. And whoever welcomes me does not welcome me, but the one who sent me. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Let's talk about a little bit about where we were. This Wednesday at Presby Youth, our youth group, I gave them this mini scenario, and I thought that maybe you can still relate to this one, or in your mind, think it through. They certainly could. I said, imagine if a teacher pulls you and two of your friends aside by name. Okay. You, and you by name. Come with me, right? We decided that means you were either one of two things in that moment, right? One of two things. Yeah, this is universal, right? You were either in very big trouble, or you're special, right? Specially chosen. So they leave, right? They leave with the teacher. And now here you are with the class of the unchosen, not knowing what you're not chosen for, wondering, which was it? Are these three in trouble? Are these three special? Here we are remaining. So which was it? Well, we know it as the latter. They were special because it was the literal mountaintop experience that we come to know as the transfiguration. The transformation of Jesus had just taken place in some of these verses that we skipped over since we last visited Mark's gospel. Okay? There was this big, big moment. And it was, Peter and James and John. They were chosen to be special witnesses up on the mountaintop to this supernatural and certainly life-altering event for everyone involved. The rest were not. They were not on the mountainside, so one assumes down below, almost like Moses on the mountain. They had purpose, though, these ones, if you read carefully, the ones that were not chosen. Because as Jesus and James and Peter and John come down, they come down to this huge crowd all of a sudden is gathered. Again, not unlike Moses. And there's these legal experts leading the way of this big crowd. And this big crowd with the legal experts, they're in this conversation with these other disciples that are there. And the argument was about a boy, okay, with some very, very severe issues going on. And the argument was whether or not Jesus could, and I imagine would, I imagine should, heal or do something about the boy with the very severe issues going on. So as Jesus came down from the mountain, he met with these disciples, having the talk with the legal experts, with the disciples he had with him. And he showed them all that indeed he could, and indeed he would treat the boy. So those two things have happened since we last caught Mark. Transfiguration and this miracle. So it is then immediately after these episodes that we find Jesus and his disciples now walking again along a path or a road from point A to point B, as they did. Another scene, I think, that we can picture, we can imagine that we've been in, and you know how it is when people do that. When you're walking along with a group of people, let's be real about this, 12 to 14 to 16 people, you're not, walking in a circle so you can all see and hear? No, you're not walking in a straight line, hogging the road. You wouldn't do that. So how do you do it? You kind of string out, right, as you walk. You string out. And we've all been a part of this, and it naturally strings out in the groups of 2 or 3 along the way. You can kind of make out that there's a conversation going on up there, but you probably don't know what it's about. So I imagine Jesus mostly was solo, probably. So then I asked myself, did Peter, James, and John, did they seclude themselves because this event had just happened to them? Were the 3 of them now together talking about it or talking about, well, something else? And then there's a group of 2 or 3 here and a group of 2 or 3 here. We've all been in those groups. In those groups, did you know that you can have conversation even? Let's say about the guys or gals that are 2 groups ahead. You can have a conversation about them and being outside walking. You know pretty well they're not going to hear what you're saying, right? Certainly Jesus isn't going to hear what you're saying, right? If he's way up there and you're back here, you can just kind of talk. Okay, the 2 or 3 of us are talking. So upon reaching their destination, from nowhere, the question comes from Jesus. Calmly, firmly, not angrily. What were you talking about? I can't even say it right, as he would. Now I can imagine there's another feeling that you know what this feeling feels like, right? When he asks you, what were you talking about? You know that feeling. Silence. It's the feeling of when a teacher or parent asks a question that points to the name of something that you were doing and you're just too ashamed to not even lie about it, not even tell the truth about it. It's silence. What were you talking about? Jesus calmly asks. Word means logos. Logos means word. Logos also means wisdom. So Jesus is the wisdom of God, and that is what he speaks when he says anything. James 2 writes of wisdom. And as we examine that question Jesus just asked, what were you talking about? Everybody already knows the answer. We look to James as we kind of interrupt this for a little wisdom. Let's see if we can find some threads between wisdom, between what James has to say, between Mark, and between Jesus, of this question and this answer in our lives today. Let's explore that. Because James 2 asks a question at the beginning of his text. He says, "Are any of you wise and understanding? Then show it," he says, "with a lifestyle that comes from where? From wisdom." He writes, if you have bitter jealousy or if you have selfish ambition in your heart, then stop bragging and living in ways that deny the truth. That is not wisdom from above. It's this kind of stuff, jealousy and selfish ambition. It's this stuff that is not from above. That's not what God is involved with. Where that stuff is from is right here. This is earth stuff, James says. He even goes and says that jealousy and selfish ambition, they equal in the equation disorder and evil. So what is the wisdom from above? How does it show itself here? James would say that it is pure, that it is peaceable, that it is gentle, that it is obedient, it is filled with mercy and good actions, it's fair and genuine. We've been spending good time together in James lately, as we have in Mark. We've certainly noticed that he does not mince words about what is wrong with the world. And he tells us exactly what's wrong. And once again, here he goes, speaking it. Back to the question. What were you talking about? Jesus asked them. Jesus isn't angry. He never shows anger in this. It doesn't say he was angry. I think he's not angry because he can already sense the shame of the 12. There's no need to be angry when you already know that the shame is there, right? And don't look past that he never got a response, actually. He never got a response from any of them. But he knew that they had an argument about the greatest. So then the teacher decided to teach some wisdom. So he said to them, whoever wants to be first must be the least of all and servant of all. Could it be that it takes more self-discipline? Could it be that it takes more hours of hard work? Could it be that it takes more practice? Could it be that it takes more self-sacrifice to be the least than to be the greatest? Just by our straight-up societal context, we struggle with this message. And I think it's because of the vocabulary that's used. Because we struggle because the message of being great surrounds us in everything we do. It is what we strive for. If we're not setting out to be great at something, then really what are we even setting out to do in the first place? Greatness is what has put us on the map. Greatness is what will keep us the strongest. Greatness will provide for our children's children. And on top of that, it feels really great to be great. It does. Yes. But here's part of where we can have some wisdom understanding and not totally lose this in our context. But what if the opposite of greatness in Jesus' terms was not failure? He doesn't use that word anywhere. So what if the opposite of greatness was not failing or losing or weakness? What if it wasn't any of those things? What if instead it was something completely different than those? Last week we introduced the idea with Peter, and I mentioned it before, about these Christ paradigms that Peter had and that we have. See, when Jesus said that he was going to have to go die and carry the cross, that did not agree with Peter's Christ paradigm in his mind of what it meant to be Christ. And we talked about last week how that challenges our paradigm of Christ too. Well, we keep doing it today. This theme continues. So what if the opposite of greatness was not losing or being a loser at all? What if, in the divine wisdom of God's definition of it, the opposite of greatness was not losing, but the opposite of greatness was serving? And then Jesus tells us the definition. Who was the greatest? Jesus was the greatest. And he laid his life down as a servant for all creation. That was the greatest. That's the greatest. James asks, what is the source of conflict among you? What is the source of your disputes? From where does it come? Conflict, disputes. What are those things? Where are they coming from? Well, he answers. Don't they come from your cravings that are at war within you, your own life? Isn't that where they come from? You are jealous for something that you just can't get. So you struggle and you fight. You struggle and you fight. Reflecting on this and where we've been, last week our lesson was carrying the cross. And I shared with you my own personal reflection that I've observed in my own life and that I've observed around me. And that was when it came to speaking evil or lies. And that was this, that I have learned that it is self-preservation, right, that leads to the most lies that I've ever told or heard. It's protecting yourself so you speak the untruth. We lie to protect. So I challenged us last week to look around at the world, to do some self-examining, to see if you notice the same thing about your untrue thoughts or words. So today and this week I challenge you to do another little self-examination, to look around, to find the sources of conflict among you and among our society. And consider from where do they come. See if you can identify from where they come the unwise approach to being great in those conflicts. I want you to listen. We say we're tired of it, and we are, but listen with a new ear to the slander, to the mudslinging. Listen to it. Read the comments with a wise eye. Listen to it because it's prominent everywhere. We know it. Read the tweets. Read them. See from where the source from which they come. See where they are a response to the threat of being great. So many I've seen. If my greatness is threatened, I'm putting you down to show you where you stand compared to me. So see from where they come. Look deeper into what you hear. What inner war is going on, raging inside you and inside all those voices? The church, through this gospel, has a message for this day. And that message is, by our definition, the opposite of greatness is not failure, but it is service. That message is spoken clear as words printed on a page, by a life, James tells us, that is pure and peaceful, gentle, that is obedient, that is filled with mercy, filled with good actions, that is fair and genuine. We have what the life looks like, because it is for those of us who make peace, sow the seeds of justice by those peaceful acts. So look around, listen around, and live out the message that is truly great. Amen.